What's this? A part 2 for a review? I've never done this before. What could be the cause? Easy. The Windows or Royal Edition of Final Fantasy 15 is packed with so much content that in order to really touch on everything, I had to divide this review into 2 parts. Now, for those who haven't watched part 1, viewing that isn't necessary for this video, but part 1 focused on the main game, whereas this is going to take a look at the expansions that came bundled with the various editions. But if you want to know what the main game is like, feel free to pause this and check out part 1, and come back here. Now, let's get this video going with the first expansion, Episode Gladio. Episode Gladio focuses on the solo adventure Gladio took when he left Noctis to perform a personal quest and prove his worth as his protector. To achieve this, he went to a testing ground to face off against a Final Fantasy mainstay, Gilgamesh. Right off the bat, Episode Gladio sets the trend for the other episodes by showcasing a severe shake-up to the gameplay, making it feel more reminiscent of something like God of War or Samurai Warriors, albeit slower and clunkier. This isn't a bad idea, but it clearly needed more time for further polish, as it's still very firmly grounded in the strengths and weaknesses of the main game, which despite being hack and slash is very tactical. This means that the new additions clash very heavily with the original combat system, making it hard to take advantage of changes like the damage multiplier in the middle of combat. However, compared to the base game, this episode is far more challenging, and some of the challenge does come from learning the awkward intricacies of the revamped combat, as well as the tougher fights. It's a shame though that you don't exactly get much to play with for your money if you got this as a download. Considering the length of the main game, I honestly thought the episodes would be around 3 to 4 hours, but no. This and the other episodes can be completed in the same time as Destiny 2's Warmind expansion, 90 minutes. This can be a good thing since it means the episode doesn't overstay its welcome, with its narrative being very limited in scope, and since the level design is identical to Final Fantasy XIII's, perhaps this runtime is for the best, but it can't help but feel disproportionate to the length of the main game story. I'm not gonna lie, I was looking forward to episode Prompto the most out of any of the expansions, because I heard how it revamped 15 into high fantasy Metal Gear Solid, and boy were my expectations beyond wrong. While it comes away as better than Gladio, it still suffers from some pretty severe flaws of its own. Easily, Prompto's biggest strength is the story, focusing on Prompto himself after he's separated from Noctis and forced to confront not only a disturbing truth about the Empire's military strength, but how his very existence is tied to it. This gives way to some fantastic personal drama that I'm not gonna lie had me shedding a tear in some scenes. Outside of the drama, the story also provides some pretty solid set pieces for action, with the only exception being a turret sequence at the end. It feels like it was just ripped straight out of 2008.
That's really him?
It's on the gameplay side of things where Prompto stumbles and falls. Compared to Gladio, it is more experimental and makes enough changes from the core experience to feel like something genuinely different. The stealth aspect works fine, but the episode never really throws any intense stealth sections at you, but it can still be fun. It's with the third person shooting where things start to really fall apart though. Shooting just feels awkward and clunky, and you pretty much can get the same results by using the default combat, and preserved sandbox mechanics are just unnecessary. The side quest feature just get you rewards to upgrade your snowmobile so it's easier to get around the minuscule sandbox, which only helps you get to where you continue the story or to do more side quests to upgrade more, leaving no real reason to actually pursue them. Like Gladio, episode Prompto needed more time for further polish. If the shooting was smoother and the sandbox was removed for linear progression, it would be a much better addition. But for what it is, it's still fun, and the story is the real star and is more than capable of carrying it despite its flaws. Episode Ignace ends up walking away as the strongest of the episodes by far, thanks to the experience the dev team had working on the 2 prior ones. The story this time focuses on what happened in the chaos on the streets as Noctis fought the Leviathan and the actions Ignace took that led to him going blind. The storytelling is good, but not as strong as in episode Prompto. Despite how crucial it is to the main game, it doesn't reach the same emotional heights as, well, again, Prompto's episode did, unless you're very familiar with the expanded universe material. But that isn't to say it doesn't have its highlights. The scene where he wears the Ring of Lucius is just awesome, and the short length of the episodes lends itself well here since its focus is on a very tight and exact part of the wider narrative. Unlike the other episodes, there are changes to the core combat, but this time it doesn't stray too far from what the main game game offered. Instead, it's at a faster pace, and the strategic focus is reworked by giving the player 3 different styles of attack for different situations. One focuses on singular enemies, the other for small groups, and another one for zipping about, going back and forth between different enemies. This works as intended and feels like something new yet familiar, which can also be said about how it handles its attempt at a sandbox. Unlike Prompto, where the sandbox only existed to serve itself, here it has a strategic purpose. It's divided into districts that need to be liberated for safe and easier travel. This is a nice shake-up, but it is undermined by one thing: linear progression. You're only required to clear 3 or 4 districts at minimum to progress the story, and once you reach a certain point, the sandbox is abandoned for linear corridors. Despite this though, you are free to fool around in the sandbox while it is still available, and the inclusion of a grappling hook makes the episode feel like a clunkier Assassin's Creed. A real highlight for this episode is the inclusion of an unlockable alternate ending to the main story. In particular, this is tied to how Ignace lost his vision and showcases an alternate flow of events where not only did he not lose his sight, but changed Noctis's fate. It's a nice addition that gives the episode greater value, and the new final fight with the antagonist is a fun challenge, but is a less satisfying conclusion to 15's story, since it undermines not only Ignace's sacrifice to save Noctis, but also cuts his journey short, non-canonical or not. Now we come to the last and most unique of the expansions to come out for Final Fantasy XV so far: Companions. And what makes this unique is that unlike the other 3, which elaborate on other parts of the main story, Companions acts as a sequel to the prequel film Kingsglaive while having a multiplayer focus. In this episode, you play as an amnesiac former member of the Kingsglaive who are trying to redeem themselves by helping in the maintenance of humanity's last safe haven, Lestalem. From there, events play out parallel to those in the base game, but remain detached from them for the most part, primarily focusing on wrapping up loose ends of the Kingsglaive movie and detailing what happened to some other characters from the game and expanded universe material. If anything, the only real issue the story has is that your character is a silent protagonist in a sea of people with personalities, which can be pretty jarring since in everything else we got to play as a voiced character with a personality. Gameplay at its core is identical to the base game, but has had some aesthetic changes made to take into account the presence of other players, as well as some extraneous additions. Rather than playing like an MMO, which you could reasonably expect, it plays more like Warframe of all things, with its non-linear mission-based structure and base upgrade system, where you direct power to districts and other settlements to unlock new resources to use in the missions, like a weapon upgrade station or a cosmetic shop, as well as new missions. And while this setup is all well and good, where it fumbles is in its pace, in that you need to grind the handful of starting missions constantly, not only to get your character strong enough to survive later missions, but just so you have enough resources to distribute for more power for the privilege of accessing new missions. Despite how heavy the grinding can be and the lack of protagonist personality, it is still a lot of fun, and if it was released as a standalone free-to-play title, it would have succeeded. As a whole, all of these expansions are a mixed bag that go from strength to strength and weakness to weakness, with Gladio trying to turn the game into samurai warriors, Prompto heaping on personal drama, Ignace taking a few notes from Ezio, and Companions continuing what happened after the movie. They may pale in comparison to the main game, but they still offer enough for veteran players and newcomers like myself to come back to Final Fantasy XV for more. Well, that was part 2 of my Final Fantasy XV review, done and dusted. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you really liked it, then feel free to also subscribe to the channel. Now, for upcoming movie reviews, I'm going to get some overdue stuff like Infinity War done as soon as I can, if time is willing, and for game reviews, I am planning to take a look at the upcoming RPG, Vampire. The rate things are going, this is going to be the year of RPGs for me. Anyway, I got all that and more coming up, so like usual, stick around.